Have you ever played a game that you weren't sure if you were going to like it or not for one reason or another, but you play it and you wind up falling in love with it? You know, we've all played games that we're not sure if we're going to like it or not. I mean, generally, you have an idea if you might like it or not, but there's those games that you're just not sure about, you're kind of on the fence with. And there's always that 50-50 chance that you're going to like it or you're not going to like it. I want to talk about 4 games that I've played that I was skeptical about, but wound up falling in love with. So this first game that I'm going to talk about is actually not a game, but a series. And that would be the Dark Souls series. The first Souls game I played was the original Dark Souls. Back on the Xbox 360, if you remember, they had games with gold, where every month they'd give out 2 free games for you to download if you had Xbox Live Gold. And one of the games that they had one month was the first Dark Souls. And I had heard people talk about it, mainly that, you know, it was hard. And so it was free, so I was like, well, I'm going to try it. So I downloaded it, tried it, and I got through. Well, I didn't get through, but I got to that first boss in the asylum, like the big dragon. I can't even remember what it's called off the top of my head. But I got to him, and he kicked my ass, and I was just kind of done with it. Like, it just didn't click with me. Not necessarily because it was bad or hard. It just didn't do it for me at the time. But fast forward, by the time Dark Souls 3 comes out, the Souls series is much more well known at this point, and Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne are far more polished than the early Souls games. So I picked this one up for $20 when it was on sale, and I struggled with the first boss because I wasn't familiar with the Souls games. Normally with a game like this, when you fight an enemy or a boss, you just want to get in there and like attack it as much as you can, and then they might hit you and damage you. But in the Souls games, they hit you once, you might die. So, you know, I had to learn to like pace myself, do some damage, and get the fuck away from the enemy. Do some more damage, get away from them. And once I learned that, I went back and I have played through the entire Soul series at this point. I have fallen in love with the series. You know, it started off, I was skeptical about it because like there was the difficulty curve and it just didn't click with me at the time. But now I love it because I gave it a fair chance. The second game that I want to talk about is Xenoblade 1 specifically. So if you remember back on the Wii, there was an online petition called Operation Rainfall, where there was 3 games. There was Xenoblade, Pandora's Tower, and The Last Story. Those 3 games had been translated into English, but they were only released in Europe. And so there was an online petition called Operation Rainfall to try to get some publishers to publish the games over here in the West. So eventually Nintendo stepped up and published Xenoblade. So when I heard that they were going to publish this here in the West, I looked up some trailers online or some gameplay, and I just got a quick glance of the gameplay, and it was enough for me to decide, okay, I'll give it a shot, and I want to support the cause. So when they published it, I had it pre-ordered, and I wound up falling in love with this game. I love the combat, I love the story. You know, I didn't know much about it. I gave it a chance and fell in love with it. It was just a complete gamble. And I love the entire Xenoblade series. You know, I've finished all of them except for 3. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But I enjoy the whole series and I want it to keep going. So next up, I want to talk about Okami on the PS2. So, you know, this came out during an era where they were trying to experiment with the cartoony graphics. You know, there was this, and the Wind Waker was the big one, and another one called Automata Lista. Those are the only 3 games I can think of that used that off the top of my head. I didn't really hear people talk about this back in the day. I think mainly because most people didn't play it because of the cartoony art style. Eventually, you know, I picked it up and played through it, and I didn't realize that it was a like Zelda-ish style game where you have like, you know, dungeons and you get like equipment, quote unquote. I mean, it was brush techniques, but you know, it was just very like action adventure Zelda-ish style game. And I was not expecting that. I didn't know what kind of game it was. I just heard good things about it. So when I played through it, I wound up falling in love with it. And I still want to play the DS game. I still haven't picked it up yet. And I'm excited for the next Okami game whenever that comes out. But it was a game that I regret waiting so long to play. And I wish I would have played it sooner. The last game that I'm going to talk about is probably the biggest one on this list, at least for me, because it is part of a series that I like already, but I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it, especially because I heard mixed things about it before I even played it, but I don't listen to what reviewers say. But Final Fantasy XVI. I very much enjoy the old school turn-based Final Fantasies. You know, those are the ones that I grew up playing. I don't like that they changed how the game is. And like to me, 10 was the last true Final Fantasy. I know a lot of people aren't crazy about it because it's like a super linear game, but 10 still has that turn-based combat. It's aside from the linearity, it still knows what Final Fantasy is supposed to be, mostly. But after 10, you know, 11 onward, the games are like drastically different. It's like, you know, 11 is an MMO. I don't know what you want to call 12. It is turn-based, but it's not. You know, it's more like Xenoblade than anything. 13's turn-based, 14's another MMO, 15 and 16 are more action hack and slashes. And I played through 15 and I liked it, but I didn't enjoy it as much as I wish I would have. And I knew 16 was also another action game like 15 was. And, you know, like I said already, 16 had some mixed reception. So I kind of went into it not expecting to like it, but I wound up enjoying it far more than I expected to. I think part of it has to do with the fact that I had my expectations lower than previous Final Fantasies. So, you know, I didn't have that bar so high, so I didn't like get disappointed. It was very interesting. I don't like the fact that there's no real like party system in 16. It's just you play as Clive and you get maybe a partner here or there like Jill. But overall, I liked it for what it is. I mean, it's still, to me, I still feel that it's not a true Final Fantasy game. I want those turn-based RPGs. You know, Bravely Default and Octopath Traveler, which are both by Square Enix, those feel more like classic Final Fantasy than the actual Final Fantasy. But that's besides the point. Have you ever played a game that you weren't sure about that you wound up loving? Let me know in the comments. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.